everybody, my name's Tammy and this is my booktube channel, Believe in Yourself. And today I have my dad here as a special guest and back by popular demand. It is Thanksgiving Day, we've had dinner and my husband is very kindly in there washing up the dishes, so you may hear some noise. And we also have my dog and he likes to make noise too. So
and we have my wife right over here hiding.
Yeah, she'll probably be quiet. She's probably the only one that'll be quiet out of all of us. So today I asked my dad, he has some stories. There's especially one story that I really want on film. I want a record of it so that our whole family can enjoy hearing the story over and over again. And so I asked my dad if he would give us a few stories and just talk about things. And he said he would. And so what he did was, how many memories do you have that you're sharing?
I'm sharing 6.
Okay. And so he picked out 6 books that he's going to very briefly talk about. And then he's going to tell a little story that goes with it, or a memory. Okay. So go ahead. You're up.
Hello there. There's a lot of every family has stories and memories, and our most of these stories go around me and my family, and it's fun to be able to share them, to think about them. I just finished reading 2 books about baseball.
Murder at First Pitch.
And the other one is Concession Stand Crimes. It's a duology. It's a cozy mysteries, and very, very fun, especially if you like baseball. And I would recommend it. And it's by
Nicole Asselin. And as always, I'll put all the titles of the books and the authors down below.
And I apologize, my throat seems kind of tight today. But I could go on and give you the premise of this book and tell you a lot about it. But I would recommend you reading them. But I have a bonus story along with these 2 books. And the bonus story starts in 1945 when I was born. And I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. And in 1950, I was living with my mom, and together we were living with her parents, my grandparents, Grandma Abishan and Grandpa Abishan. And I know my wife, Ann, one of her biggest wishes and desires that she could have in this life is to be able to have memories with her grandparents. But when she was born, all 3 of them were already passed away, and one she never got an opportunity to really get to know. And I feel like I'm very lucky because I got to know all 4 of my grandparents. But Grandpa Abishan has a special place in my heart, and I wish you would have got to know him, Tammy, as a great grandpa. He really loved his wife and his daughter and 2 sons, but he also loved his grandkids, and I was the oldest by about 8 or 10 years. So in 1950, he was a #1 baseball Cardinal fan, and every weekend, if the Cardinals were playing in St. Louis, he would take me to one of the ball games. Back in 1950, the Cardinals were playing at Sportsman's Park, which is where the Cardinals started playing Major League Baseball. And also, some of you might remember the St. Louis Browns who became the Baltimore Orioles eventually. But Grandpa would take me. I was a 5-year-old, and he was a grandpa, and I thought I really liked baseball. We would sit out on the third base side between third base and the outfield. And one day, a ball was hit out there, and sure enough, my grandpa jumped up with his hand in the air, and he caught the baseball. And what did he do? He gave it to me. And it's a memory that I'll always remember. And now I'm a grandpa. And
You're a great grandpa.
I'm a great grandpa too. Yeah. And I was able to take all my grandkids to ball games here in Idaho Falls. And I started a little earlier. They were all 2.5, 2 3/4, and they
Two
just
and 3/4.
2 3/4, and they had no idea what baseball was, or what a baseball park was, or anything. But if they could go with Grandpa to the ballpark, they were happy.
Yeah, they called him Poppy. They still call him Poppy.
Yeah. So.
And you've taken all the great grandkids, and
Yeah.
we went. Was it this last summer? We took Amelia and Charlotte, and that was fun.
So
yeah,
when Grandpa Abishan, when the ball game got over, we would go out of the ballpark, and we'd walk around the ballpark, and they lived only 2 or 3 blocks away from Sportsman's Park, and he would stop by and get him something at one of the stores, and he would always buy me 1 or 2 packs of baseball cards. And of course, my mom threw them away. No, Mom, I'm sorry to say that, but that's a bonus story, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Tammy, except when she got to be very young, she would start going to ball games with me too, and all of her kids loved to go.
Yep, going to ball games has been a big part of everybody's lives here.
Yeah.
Because of my dad, because of great grandpa Abishan.
This is the next book I want to recommend. The author is Catherine Coulter. This is Nemesis. And really, this book has very little to do with the bonus story that you're going to get.
Is this the bonus story that I specifically asked?
I don't know.
No? Okay, never mind. I don't know what all these stories are. So
she has written a lot of books. Starting her career out, she wrote a lot of romance books. If you go on to fantastic fiction, you'll find different series of 6 books, 8 books, 10 books. And then eventually she wrote a couple of suspense books. And I don't think she named them right at the first, the FBI books, but they've developed into the FBI series. And there's about 30 of them in the series, and she's still writing them now. But the one thing that I really like about these books, other than the thrillery suspense type of book, the 2 main characters, one is named Dylan Savage, and his wife is Lacey Sherlock. And he runs a really high department in the FBI, and his wife came over to his department, and they got to know each other and liked each other, and eventually got married. And that was maybe in book 5 or 6. And throughout the next 20 some books, they are partners in the FBI, and they're also husband and wife. And you couldn't find two people that love each other more. He loves her and she loves him. One of them gets shot, the other one finds out. They just worry themselves to death, and they just have to get to the hospital as fast as they can. True love. And I would recommend this book, of course. But the bonus story is very dear to me and to my wife, Anne, because we met at a college, and we were both working in the cafeteria. And I was working back in the back room, luckily for me, with a bunch of girls. And the guy that was the manager, when I came to ask if I could have my job back after a couple of years, he said, "I'm sorry, Bob, there's only one job left, and that's called a dessert girl. And you'd have to sit there and cut cakes and pies, and you'd have to be working with 6 or 8 girls." And I thought, well, that might be bad, but I think it'd be pretty fun. So one day...
So were you dessert girl?
I was.
I didn't know that. I knew you guys met in the cafeteria, but I didn't know you were the dessert
married
girl.
the dessert girl.
That's great.
And
He was dessert girl and you had the hot car.
Right.
that's another story. So one day we were standing around at the end of our shift, and I asked these girls, I said, "Do you know anybody that has an older car that doesn't cost a lot of money?" And out of the corner of my eye, I see this short girl walking across the in front of us, all in a white apron and a hat over her head. And she kind of turns her head as she's walking, carrying this great, big, huge pan of old dishes and stuff. And she says, "I do." And I look at her and I said, "Wonder who that is," because she's already gone.
If he was dessert girl, what was your job?
I was out on the line serving,
On the line.
dishing up food
Okay.
to the,
And I'd never seen her.
He should have been dessert girl and you should have been busboy.
I was main line.
Well, I didn't see her anymore when we got off of our shift. And I went downstairs to the main floor in front of the college library, and next to it was a huge bulletin board. And I don't think I was really planning on going home to visit my folks, because the college is in Rexburg, Idaho, and my folks were living in Las Vegas. So there's no way you could get from Rexburg or Idaho to Vegas over just a weekend. You'd just be driving both ways. So I was looking there anyway, people going to Boise and to Salt Lake and all the different towns around, wanting somebody to share a ride and share the expenses. And nobody else was standing there. And somebody says, "Hi there." And I turn to look, and here's this girl that's trying to sell me a car, and her best friend. And they say, "What you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just ready to go home and study." And they say, "Aren't you going to the lecture this afternoon? It's a special one." And I said, "No, I'm not really interested." And what happens? Anne and her best friend grab a hold of both my arms, and they kidnap me. And they're just little short girls. And I was pretty big then, and a lot heavier
You
than
didn't put up any fight.
No, I didn't. We went into the hall, and her friend went clear down the front like 30 30 rows down to sit with her boyfriend. And I thought, oh no, here I am with this girl, I don't even know her. And we went over into the middle of the aisle and watched the lecture. I have no idea what that lecture was. All I was thinking was, I'm sitting here with the most beautiful girl at this college, and how can I talk her into letting me carry her books to her next class? Well, when it got over, I said, can I carry your books? And she said, sure. And I picked them up and we walked to the class. And I didn't really know until a couple of days later. I said, it was fun being with you yesterday. And she said, yeah. And one of my other roommates is in that class. And when you walked me up carrying my books, they said, where did you find him? And so the next day, we went down to Joy Drug, and I bought her a hot fudge sundae. And it was just before the movie house opened for a double feature. And we watched Cool Hand Luke and Up the Down Staircase and had a great time. And it felt like we'd known each other forever and ever. So what happened next? 3 weeks later, we were engaged. Then what happened next? 4 months later, we were married. And then what happened next? 11 months later, we had a little baby girl, which is Tammy here. And kind of the final what happened next is 56 and almost the third years later, here we are now. Me talking to this camera and
And Mom over there laughing at you.
Yeah. I'm not Dylan Savage from Catherine Coulter's book, and I don't think Mom is Lacey Sherlock, but we're really in love, and she's a great person, and I always kid everybody that she's my girlfriend, and not for them not to tell my wife, and that's the end of that bonus story. Now the next book is by Iris Johansen, and it's Shattered Mirror. Now this series is about Eve Duncan, and I can't remember what she calls herself in the book, but she has gone to college and learned how to do this. She's the best in the world now, and she all the police departments and people know about her, and they beg to send her these skulls, these bodies, these bones of missing children that they've found somehow out of a grave. And she sculpts them back to life, and a little bit of, I guess, paranormal, but maybe not. She just gets the real feeling of this person's soul, and she just kind of knows how to make the eyes right the way they're supposed to be, and the nose how long, and how the lip and everything. And she's a good main character, and I'm sure you'll like these books. And I promised Tammy I'd only talk 1 minute about a book, and I've already talked 3 or 4 about this. But in this book, this particular book, Shattered Mirror, during this case, one of her daughters, or one of her young ladies that live with her, almost like a daughter, has a grandpa who is a Mafia leader from Russia. And he's a bad guy, but he loves this young lady, and him and Eve kind of bicker back and forth. But he is the main part of this book, and you don't read too many books about mafia leaders. And
You need to come over here and join us for this. She wants to stand behind, so I'm not trying. You know what? You sit down and I will stand behind.
No, let me stand.
No.
No,
Come over
really.
here. Come on.
No. See, look, this
Careful.
this fits real
Come
good.
sit down.
okay, let's go ahead and continue.
They don't want to listen to us fight over who's going to sit.
And the next bonus story has to do with the Mafia. After we got married, we moved to Las Vegas and lived there. I got to be a banker, and I was as a banker for 17 and a half years, and then had 2 more careers after that. But while living in Las Vegas, I was working at a branch at Tula Springs, and the manager's name was Reno Fruza, and he was Italian. And we were back then, we were so dirt poor, I don't know how we lived and got by.
Jump in anytime.
We used to eat pot pies that were 15 cents a piece for dinner.
And ground beef at that time, back in 68 and 69, was 5 pounds for $1.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? But and I probably only had one suit that I wore every day to work, the same suit.
And you sewed your own clothes, if I remember right.
Yep.
Yeah.
My maternity clothes and stuff. Yeah.
And Reno brought me over to his desk one day into his office and said, "Bob, would you like to go to a really fancy dinner for you and Ann?" And I thought, well, sure. I mean, we can't even afford McDonald's. And I know he knew we were dirt poor and didn't have any money. And he was just trying really to be nice.
Well, and he and his wife were supposed to go, but they couldn't make it. I
Right.
remember you saying,
Yeah, it
that's
was-
why.
They were members of the Italian American.
Mafia, basically.
Well, it wasn't called that.
I know, but
It wasn't called Mafia, but
I know.
yeah, big connections there.
yeah.
Probably half of the people at that dinner, well, all of them were Italian,
Yeah.
Except you two.
Yeah.
the McCullochs.
So tell them what you guys did to get ready for this dinner and everything.
Well, I mean, I was like 8.5 months pregnant, and so I couldn't go out, and I knew they were going to be dressed up really major, and I couldn't go out and buy a new dress. So I went down to the store and got some cloth, some fabric, and made a new maternity top.
And she looked nice.
And yeah, I was about like this, pregnant, and all of these nice ladies at this that were Italian, they just were so kind to us and nice to us. And
Didn't they have you even go sit at the...
yeah,
They
they
had-
brought us over to the main table.
We walked
They
in
had
the we
table.
walked in the door, and the president of the company had apparently been called by Reno, saying, "Look out for these 2 people
These two, I
The
don't
two that'll stick out.
the two.
and make them feel welcome." And he saw us come
These
in,
are not mafia people, but make
Be
them
nice.
happy.
and he walked over and introduced himself, and made the people in the front table scoot around so there's room for Ann and me. And they were quite the people. I don't know how.
They even invited me out to their villas. These were nice ladies. I mean, they invited me to come out and visit them at their villas and in Las Vegas and everything.
And they wanted to
It was
show Ann their brand new statuary
Yeah,
that they
they-
just got from Italy.
from Italy. Yeah.
And across for me was another banker. And
Do you want to sit down now?
No,
Okay.
he was head of the Department of Human Resources for another bank in Las Vegas. And we were talking back and forth. And he must have known that I was just a trainee and I was only 23, barely. And he said, well, Bob, do you have a business card? And I thought to myself, yeah, right.
business cards.
I'm lucky to have a backdoor key to get in without knocking. And but they were nice. It was a great night.
It was a lot of fun.
And when we drove home, we had to laugh. And I probably brought it up. I said, could you imagine if there had been a raid on the Mafia while we were eating there, and they took us all down to the police station? Italian name, McCulloch's. And they would have said that he must have been a hitman. So that's the end of that story.
Yeah, I'm going to go sit
Okay.
down and listen.
Be careful. I wanted my dad to tell that story because I've heard about that growing up my whole life, and we need it documented. So,
Well, the next one deals mostly with her. And the book is Cassidy. And I'm sure you've heard of Butch Cassidy.
it's by Lee Nelson.
And he was the biggest and baddest bank robber anywhere in the West when him and his gang and everything, they would rob banks left and right and trains and everything, but mostly banks. And one Saturday morning, while we were still living in Las Vegas, and Tammy now was maybe 2.5, and she was not very naughty very much, but I knew that Anne was probably tired of being a mom, and there were things that she had to do that she never could get worked in during the week. So I thought I'd be a good husband and tell her that I'm going to take our little daughter down to the bank on Saturday, nobody else there, and I had some work to do and she could do whatever she needed to do. So I put her blanket out in front of my desk and her sippy cup and her bag of animal crackers, cookies, and a couple of little toys. And she was just having a great time. And I was working on the different things that I had to get done that Saturday morning. And all of a sudden behind me, I heard a big banging on the drive-in window. And I turn around, and there is this.
This is in Las Vegas at a bank.
On a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
He must have been 6'6" or 7, and had this biggest shotgun that he was holding in front of him. And I thought, what? What's wrong? And then he points that way, and then he points that way. And I look both ways at the front doors, and there are 2 other big
The whole
policemen
SWAT team.
with their shotguns. And I thought, oh my, what's happening? So I go over to the front door, and the policeman, not only one at the door, but about 5 or 6 come right in and spread around in the bank. And I still don't know what's going on. And I look down at the blanket, and Tammy's not there. Where's Tammy? She's over by the vault, spinning the dial, setting off the silent alarm on a Saturday morning in Las Vegas. No wonder the SWAT team showed up. They were sure that Butch Cassidy was robbing the bank. And I told them who I was and what my daughter apparently done. And they didn't laugh. They told me, don't do that ever again. Don't bring her. And I locked the door. And I'm sure those policemen, as they drove home, laughed and laughed and laughed. And she gave me the shock of my life. So thank you, Tammy.
I'm always here to entertain.
Yeah. Now, the next book I want to talk about is by Joanne Fluke, and it's Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder. And if you guys are cozy mystery readers, you know Joanne Fluke. And her main character is Hannah Swenson. She owns a cookie shop or a bakery shop, and as a
Sorry.
anything?
We're just
No.
sorry.
Sorry. She always finds of somebody murdered in her book, of course, and she always helps the police find out who did it. She has a lot of good people in the book that are really good people that you learn to really like and everything. She doesn't only just cook desserts, but there's always parties and Thanksgivings and Christmases and a whole slew of whole meals, roast beef and chicken and everything. And throughout the book, there are recipes in every book at the end of every chapter. And at the end of the whole book, there are a whole bunch of extra recipes. She's even written a cookbook with the recipes from her first 15 or 16 books. And I used to buy these books once a year for Anne, and I'd keep them hidden away and give them to Anne for a Christmas present. And after 26 or 27 of these books and presents, I finally asked Anne, and I'm not a cozy mystery reader. I said, "Are these any good?" And she said, "Oh yeah, they are." And Tammy's read them too. And I said, "Do you think I would like one?" And that year I started in January with the cookie book mystery. And then I would read another couple ones in January and 2 or 3 in February. And by a year and a half later, I was caught up with Anne, and I was waiting to read the next book out as quick as Anne was. It's excellent series, but bonus story. Anne and I were working downtown in Idaho Falls, where we live, and downtown there are, back then, which is probably, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago, there were like 15 little teeny cafes that maybe would only hold 15 or 20 people in their little cafe or restaurant. And one day I was picking up our order to take back to our office so we'd have some lunch. And the owner was talking to another customer and said, "Yes, we're going to have a contest. And we've asked our customers to bring homemade soup recipes in. We'll choose 5 of them. And in a couple of weeks, we'll have a new recipe on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then the next week, all of our customers who tried these recipes will vote on which one was the very best." I went to work and told Anne the story, and she was excited. And I said, "What you ought to do is give me a copy of your Czechoslovakia soup, which is to die for." And she said, "Okay, I'll do it." The next day I dropped the recipe off to the owner, and then I forgot. A couple of weeks later, on a Friday evening, the phone rings, and it's for Anne, and it's the owner of this cafe. and says, Ann, you've won our prize, which is 3 days and 2 nights in Las Vegas, totally paid, airline, rent-a-car, motel, food. And she just, I think if I remember right, she probably screamed. It was such a surprise to her. And so we didn't wait very long. About a week and a half later, we were on our way to Las Vegas. And so I've asked my daughter to put in the description box the recipe for the Czechoslovakia soup. And I hope you'll really like it. When it's a trip and a lot of memories. And the next book I'm going to read or recommend.
I have to jump in though. My mom is a really good cook. She has always been a really good cook. So it wasn't any surprise to us that she won the prize. That was a big prize.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
The next book here is Moby Dick. And a month ago or so, Tammy was on her channel, and she said, I'm going to try to read Moby Dick in 2025. I've always wanted to. It's pretty big. I hope I like it. And she likes to buddy read. And I felt like she was kind of out there all by herself. So as a dad, I pick up the phone, and I didn't know how big it was. It's huge. And I thought to myself, what have I committed myself to? But I asked her if I could buddy read it with her. And we're going to in May of next year. Now, the only thing I know about this book, other than it's big,
135 chapters.
135 chapters. And I don't skim chapters. Tammy, the only thing I really know about this book, I understand it's a whale of a fish story. I hope you can make jokes on this here.
Yeah.
Bonus story is fishing, and there could be 100 fishing stories. But I'm only going to pick 3. The one, Ann and I were living in Lovelock, Nevada, and we decided to come up on vacation one summer to Montpelier, Idaho, near Salt Lake, by Bear Lake. And I'm losing my... we got up there. We stayed with her mom and dad. Both of our kids were with us, right? They stayed with Grandma and Grandpa Wixom, and we went fishing up the canyon on the Montpelier Creek, which is Ann's hometown. And we pulled into the parking lot and parked. I helped get Ann's gear out, set her up by this great big huge pond or pool or hole. And she started to put her worm on her hook. And I said, okay, you go ahead and fish there. When you're done, walk down the creek. I'll be at the next one. And I walked down to the next one, and I got there, laid my stuff on the grass, and I looked down, and in the hole must have been 200 fish swimming around. I said, whoa. And I hurried and put a worm on my hook and threw it out, and it just barely touched the water, and I had a fish. And I pulled it in, I took it off. I didn't put it in my fishing bag, I just threw it on the grass. Put another worm on, threw it out, boom, another one. In like 10 throws, I had 10 fish. And I thought, I don't know how they're here or why they're here. And I've had 10 fish in 10 throws in about 10 seconds. And I hope Ann's having as much fun, but I'm going to go tell her. And I said, how are you doing? I said, nobody's biting. I said, come down here. I've caught 10 fish in about 3 or 4 minutes. And she said, you're kidding me. You're telling me a fib. And so we went down, and her eyes went about this big. And she put a worm on hers, and boom, she had one. And I had another one. She had two more. And within another 10 or 15 minutes, we both had our limit, which was, what, 12 or 12 at that time. So we had 24 fish, and they were all pretty big ones, you know.
They were big ones.
But they were all
They were bigger than that.
10, 12, 14 inches long. And so we threw the fish into the fishing bag, hopped in our car, drove down the canyon to her folks' house, dropped the bag in the shade, went in the house, and her dad said, "Fishing's no good, huh?" I said, "Oh man, it was really good. We got our limit already." And her mom said, "What?" And her dad said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, come out and look." And I dumped the bag, and all these fish are jumping around. And what does her mom and dad do? They don't even stop to clean the fish. They grab their fishing poles and their worms, and all four of us up the canyon we go. And I don't know how many fish we caught then, but they got their limits, and we got another 5 or 6. And then we went back home, back to our house, and cleaned the fish, and had a big fish dinner. Now another fishing story I want to tell has to do with Tammy and her brother Craig. When we were living in Lovelock, there was nothing to do there. It was a town, I would say there's 6 people that lived there, but there was more than that.
This is in Nevada.
And it was between Reno and Winnemucca and Fallon. And I mean, between like 60, 90 miles. We were just right out in the middle of the desert, probably a mining town originally. And to tell you how small it was, we got there like on a Thursday, and Ann and I decided we would go shopping on Saturday. We parked at the end of the main street, and we walked down the one side, turned to the stoplight, walked up to the next side, and we went into the stores even, and we were done in like 10 minutes. So there was nothing to do there. But we learned that there was pretty good fishing, not big fish like we were used to. But we went to this little creek or
Rye Patch Reservoir.
What was the river? What was the river's name? Rye Patch River, or a creek. I don't know the name.
Dam.
And we sat down. It was a big open pond hole, and casted out her worm, and boom, just like the other story, she had a fish immediately, and watched her pull it up, and it was a little teeny bullhead catfish. And every time we cast out, we'd catch another one. So we'd hand the pole to Tammy and to Craig, and they'd pull them in, and the fish was dangling in front of them.
It was amazing as kids, not knowing how to fish, to have your dad or mom hand you the pole, and like 10 seconds later you had a fish. Magic.
We tried to eat those, but they were no good. And the other, like I said, there's a lot of stories, but the one story that's probably always going to be dear to my heart is where I grew up.
We'll have to do it pretty quick.
Is the Teton River up on the Teton, near Feld, Idaho.
Yeah,
near the Tetons Mountains.
Near the Teton Mountains, and just over the mountains is Jackson Hole, and pretty close is West Yellowstone. And you had to walk down the canyon to go fishing. And the day before your mom and I got married, I drove her up to show her the old farmhouse and the Teton River. And my aunt said, take your uncle's fishing pole and take our little dog with you, and here's some worms. And I went down to the river and showed her showed her the old bridge, which was washed away, and the pump house. And out in the middle of the river were rocks, boulders, probably half as big
Huge.
as this room or my,
Yeah.
think of a 2-car garage as big as that. There's 3 or 4 of them together. And back then I was only 22.
They're scattered all through the river because this is a great big huge canyon, and they would roll down in there,
And they've probably been there for years
hundreds and
years.
hundreds of years. Yeah.
So Ann and I walked up the river. I said, I'm going to go onto this rock here, and then this rock and that rock, and there's a nice hole right behind that rock where the river goes around the rock. And within a minute or two, I had caught a great big, huge rainbow trout. And I remember unhooking it and holding it by its gill. And I said, Ann, I'm going to throw this fish up on the hill. Whatever you do, don't lose it.
Catch it.
And so away it went, and she somehow got it. We caught a couple more fish and then went down to Rexburg, and the next day we were married. But there's a
I didn't
trail.
know you guys did that the day before you were married.
The day
You went
before.
fishing.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Everybody thought
So
we were
romantic.
insane.
And a few years later, I took Ann up on top of the bench and walked clear back probably a mile.
It's
And,
called Rattlesnake Trail.
Yes, it's Rattlesnake Trail for a
and
reason.
dropped down Rattlesnake Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And Ann and I fished. We get about halfway in this huge canyon we climbed out. And we were
You
in a-
can't even imagine how deep this canyon is. I mean, he's
it's,
making it seem deep, but he's not even coming close.
it's not like Grand Canyon, but it's
big.
It's big
Yeah.
and deep. And I've also taken Tammy there twice.
We've been there many times.
Yeah.
Many
And
times.
The last time I went there, I went with her and her brother and his friend.
You and I went a couple years ago. We went up in the morning and just walked down to the pump.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but not down Rattlesnake.
No. I've only been down Rattlesnake Trail
Twice.
twice. Yeah.
And I thought then I was old, but Tammy was a senior in high school.
You were younger than I am now.
Lots younger.
Lots younger.
And I couldn't think about getting all the way up to the pump. And
It's really hard to get back up Rattlesnake Trail.
so we went up the canyon, and Tammy was so nice and loved me so much. Every 10, 15 feet, I'd have to stop and catch my breath. And she'd stay with me. My son and his friend, they just scooted out. And I told them, the keys are in the ignition, drive further up and come get us. Well, the windows and the doors on the driver's side were locked. And so they were just...
We were out in the middle of literal nowhere
And
with the keys locked in the car.
and here we are halfway up the canyon, a little 10 feet more. And finally we get up there and I walk around the car. They say, we would have brought the car, but it's all locked up. We went around the back window of the back seat was open, and we were able to unlock the car and get home. Or maybe there would be no video like this.
We'd still be hiking home.
I would have been looking for you.
I hope I haven't bored you. I gave you 6 recommendations. This is a BookTube channel, so read those books if you're interested, and keep watching Tammy's videos. I think she does a good job.
Thank you for being here
Okay,
and the stories.
all right. I hope I did okay.
You did great.
There's more stories, but Tammy's gonna have to remember them. They're up to her now.
Thanks a lot.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.